half with me. For those of you who attended my session during the summer, that was probably about a month, a little bit more than a month ago at this point, I'm going to be covering some of the same ground, but not all of the same ground. There are going to be a couple of things that I omit, a couple of things that I go faster on, and then a couple of new things also as part of this session. And I probably want to, if anything, move even a little bit faster than I did in the summer, just because I want to leave some time for Q&A at the end, which I think is very important, particularly as part of the coaches' conference setting. But I will ask, if possible, that we keep a lot of the questions toward the end of my presentation, just so that I can get through the things that I want to talk about before I stop for questions. Otherwise, I might end up just taking the entire time just for the presentation. And I think that really I want to make sure that I get a good question session at the end. I will admit to a lack of familiarity with the Google Meet platform, although tournaments have actually been run on it. So some people who've used Speechwire have familiarity with it for sure. But it looks like there's a chat. So if you want to put your questions in the chat, you're certainly welcome to do that. And some folks in chat might know the answer to them already. And so your question may get answered before I even get to it. Otherwise, I will certainly go through the chat at the end of the session, and I will answer any questions that I see there at that point too. So I want to start real quick with a little bit of a PowerPoint. I'm putting that right now in my video, and it does appear that that is working. So let me also just say that if you roll over my video, there is a pin video button that will allow you to pin that. Although, you know, I will say it looks kind of grainy.
Hey, Ben.
Yeah.
Ben, at least for me, probably everyone else, it's flipped backwards. There is at the bottom right, it should say present now. It'll actually allow you to just share a window. Yeah. I prefer not to do it that way, but Google does all sorts of weird video flipping stuff that I've never understood. So I will go ahead and just do that. So let's see, present. All right, we'll just, I'll try to flip back and forth. It'll work okay. So present window, we'll present this. Okay. So let's see. It's working on it. All right, so do you see a PowerPoint window now? Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. So, and then if I click this, it goes to, okay, great. I see it now. Cool. All right, I just gotta get familiar with this. So I want to answer the question first. Can Speechwire run online tournaments? Okay, good, and we're recording. Excellent. And the answer is yes. So asynchronous and synchronous meets have both already been run on Speechwire. They're being run on a weekly basis now. We just had an asynchronous tournament a few days ago. A bunch more of asynchronous and synchronous tournaments coming up in the next coming days. So just to set these terms, although I'm sure that at this point in the school year, they need no definition, the asynchronous meets are those where judges are watching videos that students have uploaded or that coaches have uploaded, and then the registration has collected the URL of that video, and then that's being served to the judge in their electronic ballot. And then synchronous tournaments happen on a variety of video platforms. Speechwire is not a video platform, but does integrate with multiple video platforms. So a synchronous tournament would be one that is running on some video platform in conjunction with Speechwire. This all works through Speechwire's electronic ballots. Some of you will have interacted with Speechwire electronic ballots already, so you've got a head start on that, but some of you will not have. But this is very important to online competition, of course. Otherwise, judges aren't going to be able to submit their ranks, aren't going to be able to submit their decisions or their feedback. So this is a little bit dated, actually. This is what the registration process used to look like for judges. I have updated the process so that now when you're registering for a tournament, you register your judges one at a time, and you put in their name and their email address when you're registering them. Speechwire also now has the ability to save your judges that you use frequently. So once you've put in their email address one time, it's going to remember them. And then you can very easily select them from a drop-down box in future tournament registrations. So hopefully that speeds things up for people. But I did that to try and make it less likely that we end up with judges in tournaments that simply don't have an email address or don't have a name, because obviously with an online tournament, that's even more important because we have to have that data in the system to start with. We don't want tournament managers having to fix all that. And so that means that the judge email addresses are there on your tournament manager's side. This is kind of what your judge dashboard looks like. You're able to see which judges have accounts already. We actually don't want the judges making their own accounts. That's one more layer of confusion for judges to have to go through. So the coaches collect the email addresses, register the email addresses. Many of the judges will be coaches who will already have accounts on the website. Those are their judge accounts. So those people will immediately show up as linked. The ones who don't have accounts yet, like a judge here, they show up with a link button. If the manager clicks that link button, it immediately sends the judge a password that they can then use to get onto the website. They can always reset their password if they need to, but that's the way that you initially link them. That means that a lot of judges early in the season will just immediately get going and will have everything they need. I'm considering putting that link process just into the registration, where basically when the coach registers the judge, they're just immediately linked. That'll probably happen. I just haven't gotten to it yet. So the dashboard page, judges, view judge dashboard, where you can see all the judges in the tournament. It's a good way for a manager to just confirm that everything is looking good, that the judges are linked. And if they're not, it gives you that opportunity to do that. I will demonstrate this. So I'm not going to worry about this too much right now. Okay. I will be demonstrating all of this. Cool. Great. That is in there from an older presentation. I also want to talk about student accounts because that's very important also. Let me see how easily I can switch to a tab. Switch to a Chrome tab, and we'll do this, and we'll share. Let's see. Hopefully, yep, it's showing me the area. So there you go. So now you've got my Chrome tab here. So this is the Speechwire website. I want to talk about student accounts briefly. So student accounts are actually important for both asynchronous and synchronous tournaments. Right now, unless you're competing on certain synchronous platforms, the students don't have to have activated their accounts in order to be registered for the tournament, although there is a chance that I'm going to be going that way for almost everything, because it ends up being a big problem if students are getting registered for tournaments and don't have a Speechwire account on the website. With asynchronous tournaments, it's still possible because, of course, the student's never actually interacting with the system in order to compete. However, electronic ballots are now delivered to the students directly in their student accounts after the contest. So it really helps if they have that account. Otherwise, you as the coach are going to end up with just a big PDF of all of your students' ballots all together. And then you're going to have to get those ballots to those students somehow, whether that's emailing everyone's comments, which is probably not ideal, whether it's breaking it into like 50 other PDFs, which is hugely laborious, or you can just give your students the accounts on Speechwire, which then just gives them access to their feedback. So I'm going to go ahead and log into my coach account. This is the part of it that you'll recognize, the bottom part right there. So if I go to my team roster, you see that now, in addition to name and pronunciation, there's also an email address field when you're adding students to your roster. If you put in a student's email address, and if you comply with this disclaimer, then when you click Add Member, they're going to immediately be emailed an activation link. And then they can click that activation link, and that activates their account. So that at that point, they're ready to go. They'll set a password, and now they're ready to receive their ballots after the tournament. They're also ready to compete in synchronous tournaments that are happening on platforms like NSDA Campus or Zoom or things like that. If I look down here at my roster, I can see, for instance, that Abby Adkins, while I have put in her email address, she has not clicked the activation link yet. So she's going to need to do that before I can register her for some tournaments that require that students have activated their account before they can take part. On the other hand, Art Bratton and Kaylee Reardon here have activated their accounts. So those would be students that I've put in their email address and they've clicked the activation link. So this is a good page for you to keep track of your students' progress in doing this. And again, it's only got to be done one time. So students just need to have this done right at the start of the year. And if they join midway through the year, something like that, you just need to take care of this process. I understand it's another step, and I know that we have a lot of steps that we have to do with everything nowadays, but it really is important. For instance, with NSDA Campus, which I'll be talking about a little bit more later, if they don't have this account, they cannot get in their rounds. There is no way that they can get in their rounds because the rounds are not a copy-pastable URL. It's a button that they have to get to in an authenticated setting. So this is vital. I mean, this is so important that these students get set up with this. And I can't really reiterate that enough. So I'm trying to make that as easy as I can and as clear as I can. I want to talk a little bit about asynchronous tournaments now that we've gone over the student accounts. So when you're registering for an asynchronous tournament, if I go to tournament registration here, let's say that I'm registering entries for an asynchronous speech tournament. So this would be where, debate doesn't work this way. You have to have live debate. Extemp can work this way. You could have a fully asynchronous speech tournament, but a lot of times people want Extemp to also be synchronous, just like debate. But for original performance, for interpretation events, for oratory, for things like that, you can absolutely do asynchronous tournaments where the student is performing in front of a camera before the tournament, and then that's being recorded somehow. I leave that up to the student and the coach. And then that's being uploaded to some place where it's being stored and presented. Things that I've seen used for that recently would be YouTube with unlisted links. I would caution you to be careful about copyright there if you're performing someone else's material. Try to keep that audience as limited as possible. Ideally, no one except the judge should be seeing this performance. But if it's on YouTube, obviously there's the capability for others to see it. So at the very least, make it an unlisted link so it doesn't show up in the search engine for YouTube. So you can just paste that link directly into Speechwire and go ahead. And there are, if you Google how-to guides for that on YouTube, there are YouTube guides on doing that on YouTube. So you can find that out. And then other ways that I've seen it done would be Google Drive. So if you put it on Google Drive for your school even, and then get a link that you can paste and share, then you have full control over that. You can delete that video at the end of the tournament if you don't want it to be up anymore. And then I also saw a website called Loom used recently at a tournament actually in Indiana. I wasn't familiar with that website. I still am not familiar with it, but it did seem to work. So if you want to check out the website Loom, that might be worth looking at too. So I saw a question pop up. Yes, you can definitely have a hybrid tournament that has both asynchronous and synchronous competition. I'll show that or at least talk about it a little bit later, but it's very simple to set that up. You can pick basically for every event and every round what platform it's going to happen on or if it's asynchronous. So you can absolutely do that. You can split your tournament up between asynchronous and synchronous for certain events. So let's say that I'm registering for a tournament that does have asynchronous events. I would go to video links, and then I would put in the video links for each of my entries. Now, let's say that DI was being run synchronous. Then there would not be a video URL for DI. But CA here, the college event, is being run synchronous. So we've got a video link for each of those things. Okay, so that's basically what that looks like on the registration side. Now I'm going to go in as the manager, and I'm actually going to show you what it's like to start one of these rounds. So I'll log into the manager's area. You'll notice that nothing has changed. It looks exactly the same as an in-person tournament. I wanted to try and keep as much continuity as I could. So then we'll go ahead and just schedule the round. So I'll go scheduling manager. Schedule competition groupings. We're just going to schedule one round, although you could schedule more than that. And then I'm going to make sure that I am the one judging this for demonstration purposes. So go here, assign a judge. I'll put myself in as the judge. I know I'm hustling through this. If you're not familiar with Speechwire to manage a tournament, that's beyond the purview of this video. This is very focused on just demonstrating how virtual tournaments work. So I apologize if there are actual new users. Unfortunately, in this setting, I'm not going to be able to do a lot for you, but hopefully you become familiar with the concepts that are going on here and the things that might be happening in Speechwire. And then certainly you're welcome to become more familiar with it later, and email me if you want to at support@speechwire.com with any questions that you may have. So I've now scheduled this round, and I'm going to go ahead and send it out. So this might be new to some of you who only...
Ben, are you sharing the right app?
Oh, good point. Good point.
Ben, are you sharing the
right
app?
I am. Yep. Yeah, sorry, I'm new to this platform. All right. Hold on. Sorry, on my other way, I could just send everything through one thing, so it was easier for me. Let me see if I can do the window. Okay, we'll do this. Okay. All right, so I think we've got my window now. Great. Okay, so I'll just rehash this a little bit. So this is the manager's area. Like I said, it looks the same as always. And I'll just go ahead and just one more time, all I did was and thank you, by the way, JD, for pointing that out. Anyone who does notice me screwing up the tech, please just yell at me because I will not know. So you've got to tell me, and I appreciate being yelled at if I do that. So we'll go ahead and schedule this. Yep. And I'll go ahead and assign myself to judge. So I'm just, again, in a tournament that I'm managing it the same way that I would otherwise. Assigning my judges, you can automatically assign them, of course. I'm just manually assigning it because I want to make sure that I can demonstrate this. So I've now gone ahead and I have scheduled it, and I'm ready now to launch the round. So launching rounds for all of these platforms happens in the same place. It always happens in Posting Center. So I'm going to go to Posting Center, and then there are ways to do each of these steps individually, the blasting and the posting and the releasing of the e-ballots. But it's a lot of clicking to do that. So I've tried to reduce the clicking somewhat. It's still some clicking, but there's now a link at the top that says release, post, and blast rounds. And there's a go button here for CA. And if I click the go button, it does all of that at the same time. So it blasts it out, posts the schematic, and releases the e-ballots. So everything now is going for that CA round. So now I will open another tab. And it won't, yes, it actually did, good. And I will go now to a judge account, and I'll show you what the electronic ballot that I just released to the judge looks like. So right at the top of the page here, there's a big link. This is the Speechwire homepage that says, are you judging or competing in an event on Speechwire? Click here to go to live.speechwire.com and access it. Okay, great. So I want to do that. Now I'm going to log in as the judge. And here we go. So I've got two e-ballots right now. There's one that I forgot to delete, and then there's one that is the one that I just released. So if I click on the new one that I just released, this is the one that the manager just gave me, and I can go ahead and start the round. Great. So now here's my master ballot. This is a tournament that's doing ranks and speaker points. The manager does have a page on the control panel. I'm actually going to jump real quick right back into the manager's area. And I'm going to go to control panel, and it's this new button here, e-balloting and video settings. On here, I'm able to select which platform I'm using. I'm able to select how people are going to be able to subscribe. And then I'm also able to configure my e-ballot. So for debate, you'd be able to set the point range and various other settings by debate event. And then for speech, you're able to put in your point ranges for speech and some other settings also for your speech tournament. So now I'm on my e-ballot, and let's say that I want to start the round. I'll go ahead to Tara here, and you'll see that for each of these students, there's a huge link that says click here to play the video for this entry. So when I click on that, it's going to go ahead and open up the video, and you'll see that this is really probably not the kind of performance we were looking for, but you get the idea. So it would be, in that case, the student's actual performance. And you'd be able to watch it. If you wanted to, you could have two tabs. So for instance, you could pull the video over to the left and pull the ballot over to the right, and have them split your screen. And then you can put in your comments, put in your time length if you want to, etc. So that's all of that. And then once you've watched all the videos, you rank, you put in points, and you save your ballot. For those of you who haven't used the electronic ballots before, I should note that once you put in your rank and points, or if you're judging debate, once you put in the decision for the debate, you cannot change those things. Once you've submitted those, they're set. If you needed to change something, you'd have to contact Tab and ask them to change it. However, you can still put in comments. So you can always change your comments as long as the ballots have not been taken down. So what that means is basically, in order to keep the tournament moving, we want to get the rank and the points in as soon as we can. We want to get the debate decisions in as soon as we can. But if the judge gets those in and still hasn't put in comments for half the students, they still have time to do that. I should also note that for asynchronous tournaments, it's not as important to keep things on the exact same schedule that you're used to for a Saturday tournament. For synchronous tournaments, it probably is, because you're still asking people for their time. You're still having them go round by round by round. Like a debate tournament would still be going, 8 a.m. round 1, 10 a.m. round 2, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. In those cases, it is running on a regular schedule. With asynchronous, I mean, you could do something like, say, we're going to release prelims on Wednesday at noon. You've got till Friday at noon to judge prelims. Then we're going to break to finals. And then you've got all day Saturday to judge finals. And then we'll have our awards assembly on Sunday. I mean, you can absolutely, and by awards assembly, I mean like a YouTube broadcast or a Facebook Live broadcast or a Zoom call or something. Or no awards assembly at all. It's kind of up to you. But all of those things are more flexible with an asynchronous tournament. You're not tied to one day to have all your rounds, although you can be if you want to, certainly. So that's the asynchronous approach. And I'm going to talk now about a few synchronous approaches. Give me just a moment here to switch back to PowerPoint mode. Let's go back to this window here. I know I could share my screen, I guess, and that would probably make that a little bit easier. Good, it does give me that option there. Outstanding. Outstanding. I'll be good at this by the time we're done with the call. So we've got now the PowerPoint back up. I already talked about all this. Okay, I want to talk about synchronous tournaments. These are live tournaments with NSDA campus. So I'm really grateful that the NSDA came to me during the summer and asked if I wanted to be involved in this video platform that they're creating called NSDA Campus, that they have created. And I was certainly happy to do so because I know that a lot of managers are going to be interested in using this platform to run their tournaments. This is a platform that NSDA is running, that they have installed open source software on their own servers that they are administering, that they are paying for, and that are focused solely on speech and debate competition. So this is basically just running speech and debate, and you have to have an account in order to get into the room. If you're a judge, you have to be logged into a Speechwire judge account, and you have to have access to the EBallot for that round. If you're a student, you have to have a Speechwire student account, and you have to be logged into that student account that has access to that round. That means there are no spectators, and everyone's got to have an account. The reason that it's set up that way is for security. They want to make sure as much as possible that the only people who are in the room are the people who are quote unquote supposed to be in the room. Also, I think there might be a technical aspect to it where they want to try and minimize the number of people in each room to make the performance better. I don't know how much of a factor that plays, but I know they want to make sure that the person who's actually performing has good video quality. And there's a real emphasis on that. And certainly I share that interest as well. There is a cost to this. With asynchronous, there's no cost. So above the cost of Speechwire, running an asynchronous tournament doesn't cost anything extra. Running rooms on campus is $6 per competition room per day. So the way to think about this, and I'm going to reconfirm this with NSDA, but I'm pretty sure this is it. They made it pretty clear, is you look at the time during the day when you're using the most rooms. So it'd probably be a prelim round, right? And then you're charged $6 for the most rooms you used at the same time during the day. So it's just kind of like a school, right? You think about all the rooms you have in your school, and let's say you need 70 rooms for your tournament. Well, that doesn't mean you need 70 rooms over the course of the day, 70 sections, total are happening. It means that at any one time, I can have 70 rooms going. Same thing with NSDA Campus. However many rooms you had going at the same time, multiply that times 6. That's your cost for the video on the NSDA Campus platform. I will bill you for that, and then I will pass that money on to NSDA. They didn't want to have 2 separate billing processes for a tournament. They wanted to streamline that into one process. So you'll receive a bill for Speechwire that also has the NSDA Campus bill in it. I'm actually going to demonstrate what this looks like. So let's go ahead and pull up, let's see, pull up this here. Okay, great. So I'm going to go to my tournament as a manager, and I'm going to schedule. I believe that I have this in DI. I'm going to want to switch tournaments, though. That'll be important. So let's go into my campus tournament, and we'll log in as the manager. We'll go ahead and schedule speech, schedule 1 DI round. Yes, schedule now. There we go. And I'm going to once again assign myself as the judge. This is all very familiar, very normal, very much what you would do at a regular tournament. You'll notice that I did assign a room. Campus does allow you to actually assign rooms in the system and then communicate what room it's taking place into campus. Every section does take place in its own room. So it's not like if Campus 101 runs over in round 1, it's going to run into Campus 101 in round 2. Campus 101 is like a theoretical construct. But one thing that sort of helps is that if you use the rooms in Speechwire, you get an idea of how many rooms you're using. So you get an idea of how much you're going to be billed at the end of the tournament, which I think is good. So if you kind of plan things out like you would with a real tournament, it helps you understand what your expenses are going to be once that invoice comes at the end. So I've now got my room all scheduled, ready to go. Make sure that, oh, can I pin this? Oh man, I'm just learning so much. Okay, this is fantastic. Now I can see what you're seeing. This is good. So I'm going to go ahead now and start the round. So I'm going to go to Posting Center, and then I'm going to say Post, Blast, and Release Rounds, and I'm going to hit Go for DI. So now DI has been blasted out and is ready to run, which is great. So I'm going to now go to my EBallot, and you'll see now that I have 3 EBallots, including this campus tournament, which would normally just show the name of your tournament. It wouldn't say like campus, campus, campus. It would say the name of the tournament, but regardless, you want to go ahead and start this round. So you're going to click on it as the judge, and then you're going to say click here to start the round. And then in this case, you don't go into each individual student's ballot to get into the video. You actually just click this button right at the top that says Open NSDA Campus Room. And then once you've done that, it's going to take you into NSDA Campus. And I am now in this round as the judge. So it knows who I am. It's been told that I'm the judge. I would have video if I wasn't currently on a Google call, but you're now ready to go ahead and judge that round. Also, I will show you what this looks like for a student. So I'm going to go ahead and log into a student account. The student account layout's a little bit different, but you'll see that I've got a number of tournaments that I've been entered in this week, and I can go ahead and click on any one of those to see the rounds that I've been released in that tournament. They're going to pop up as they're released. So if, for instance, in speech, a manager released all the prelims at the same time, the student would see all their rounds in this list, and they would just pick the one they want to go into. So you just say, I want to go into round 1, and now I have entered round 1 as a student. You'll notice my initials are different because it's this invented student that I've made up. And again, it knows who I am when I've entered this round. So at this point now, I'm ready to compete. There's a timer here that I can use. I don't know how the timer works, but I certainly encourage people to play with it and see. And yeah, that's pretty much that. So that's the NSDA Campus platform. It is pretty straightforward. I think they've done a really nice job of making it really easy for me to integrate with in a hand-in-glove fashion that I think makes the experience really smooth for both the judges and the students. Again, though, I'm going to actually stop presenting for a moment just so I can show up bigger on the screen for a moment. I want to reiterate how important it is for students to have accounts. If they're going to take part in NSDA campus, they've really got to have accounts. Already having discussions with leagues and such saying like, oh, you know, it's so much work to put in these accounts. Can't we just do it willy-nilly during the tournament? And I really discourage that because if for no other reason than student privacy, I really want these email addresses to be flowing through the coaches, not just flowing through tournament managers. I want coaches to be getting this information. Managers don't see the students' email addresses during the tournament. Those are hidden. And it's done on purpose because you get into a real thicket when you've got student data like that just flowing all over the place, being spread around. So as much as it's a pain and as much as it's going to cause headaches early, and it will, I want to try and keep that information flowing through the coaches as much as possible. So getting that information collected in that way. Let me go ahead and do my screen one more time here. And I'm going to go ahead and switch to my PowerPoint again and move on to the next thing. Those of you who watched this during the summer may remember that I talked about 8x8, which is a free platform for video. I will still mention that, but I'm not going to belabor it quite as much. It's sort of similar to Campus, but it's free. The difference is that there's a lot less security, and I haven't seen quite as good performance yet from it. I'm keeping an open mind, and we'll see. But so far, Campus has seemed to perform better than the 8x8/free Jitsi Meet option, which is another way to refer to it. But if you really have limited budget for your tournament, just keep in mind there is a free platform that could be used to do this. The difference is that it operates through an open URL. So anyone with the URL would be able to get into the round. The URL is long and is generated and then discarded. So it's relatively secure. I'll go ahead and I'll just demonstrate it real fast. It's fine. It's so quick to demonstrate. So I'll go into this tournament that's running on this other website called 8x8. It's basically a business services website that you can just ask for a meeting on by making up a web address, and you just get a meeting on this website. So I think I've already scheduled DI here. Let's see. I have. So I scheduled DI. The round's actually over. I've got results in and everything, but that doesn't mean that I can't go in and demonstrate it anyway. So I'm going to go in as a judge to my 8x8 tournament, which I've scheduled just the same way. I do actually need to release it again. Okay, release eBallots. All right, cool. We'll just blast it out. So I'm going to post and blast my DI round just like I did for Campus. So this is the 8x8 platform. I've selected. It's really very similar. The only difference is that I selected that I wanted to use 8x8 instead of using NSDA Campus. And then I've scheduled it. I've assigned a judge. I've blasted out the round. So now I'm going to go over to my judge account, reload my page. I now have a fourth ballot. So I'm going to jump into that ballot. And I've already started the round. Like I said, I already put in some results. But it does have a link here instead of a button. And this link says click to enter live video round. So I click that. And now I am in a round. So that's it. So it's right there from the ballot. It's loading, it's loading, it's loading. You'll notice it loaded a little slower than NSDA Campus did. But I've heard from some other people who run tournament management platform stuff that this can work and that it can work well. I'll see because I've got a tournament coming up on it this week. So we'll find out real soon how that works. But again, you can't see my video because I'm on a Zoom call. And then again, for the students, if I log out of my judge account, log into a student account, the students entered at this tournament too. I've released the round to them also. If they click on the round, all it's going to do is take them directly into the round. So now the student's in the same round that the judge was in. So that's that. That's the concept of this platform. It's less secure than NSDA Campus. So you'll notice that this is just a hyperlink. If I copy this link and send it to my friend is now in the room. If I copy this and send it to my mom is now in the room. Anybody can get into the room with this link. So if you're worried about security, NSDA Campus is more secure. If you're worried just about cost, 8x8 is cheaper in that it doesn't cost anything. So you're getting a trade-off here. If security is more important, then go with NSDA Campus. If you don't care about security and all you care about is saving money, go with 8x8. I will say that I think that the performance so far for campus has been superior. And again, it costs money. So I hope that continues to be the case. I want them to succeed. I want NSTA to succeed with this because I think what they're doing with the campus platform is really important and really good work. So we will see. Real quick, I'm going to present one other option that you can use as a video platform, and that's going to be Yachtly. You may have heard of Yachtly on forums or in discussion at some point, but Yachtly.com is a website that was designed specifically for forensics, much like NSTA Campus, but unlike where NSTA Campus is something that is built into Speechwire and you click a button to get to the NSTA Campus room, Yachtly is an entire website that you can export schematics from Speechwire into, which will then create competition spaces for your students. So that is integrated with Speechwire for both speech and debate. On my previous call, I demonstrated what it looked like to do debate in it. I clearly am in a speech mood right now, so I think I'm going to try to do just speech this time around. We'll see how that goes. And let me switch over here. So I'm going to go back to my manager's area. And I'm going to go to Test Tournament Yachtly. Let's do this demonstration one. That one's all scheduled already. And log in. I've already scheduled this. So if I look at DI in this tournament, there's all sorts of judges and students in this schematic. So what we're going to say is that this is a tournament that we've had registration for. We've scheduled it. We've assigned judges. We're ready to launch it on Yachtly. So I'm going to go to Posting Center. I'm going to now say Export Speech Rounds to Yachtly. And I'm going to export, what the heck? Let's export all of round one. So you basically export an entire round at a time with this platform. And then in your next round, you would export round two. And then that would replace your round one schematic in Yachtly. So there's only one schematic that's active at a time for judges and students to go into. So I'll download my Excel file that Speechwire has just generated. We'll go ahead and put that on my desktop. And now I will go to Yachtly. So let's go there. Here's the Yachtly website. And I'm going to log in. Yachtly is password protected. So basically, if anyone's going to take part in a Yachtly tournament, they're going to need to have a school account. The coach is going to have had to create it on Yachtly, and the students are also going to have to be created on Yachtly. So that's one more step and one more thing that has to be created in order to use this platform. But it brings with it some cool features that I think no other platform has. So there is a benefit to that. So I'm going to just go ahead and create a demo real fast. Let's hide this. Okay. And we're going to call it Test Ben Stewart. It'll start today, and it's going to end today. Review. You would have done this already because you wouldn't be doing a demo, but I've just created a demo tournament right here. Just give it a second to set up the tournament. Like I mentioned, judges would have to have accounts for this, and students would also have to have accounts for this in order to get in. And that's done with the Yachtly website, which is a separate website. Okay, so I'm now on my homepage. This is what the lobby of a Yachtly tournament looks like. And you'll notice that just by default, you have an auditorium room where everybody can go into to make announcements and things like that. And you have a team room. All of these rooms have video in them. I'm actually going to be building some team rooms into Speechwire for the 8x8 and NSTA campus approaches also. But in this case, it's built directly into Yachtly. And they do their video through Amazon Chime, which is an Amazon Web Services feature. I've found that in general, that video seems to be very crisp, which is nice. And so let's say that you're the manager and you need to now create the video rooms the competition is going to take place in. It says there are no postings yet. Okay, so I want to create postings. We're going to do IEs. So we're going to say next. And then we're going to upload a Speechwire file. So it has a Speechwire button right here. So we just click on Speechwire, and we're going to go here, and we're going to select my Yachtly file that I just created, and we're going to review my posting. So it has now converted that Speechwire schematic into this, which is a big Yachtly schematic. So it's got all the data in it immediately, and we click Create Posting, and it's done. So now, if I look at my competition rooms on my lobby, I've got all of the postings right here. So I can now go ahead and say, join. Like, let's say I'm one of these poetry competitors. I click join. It says select your role. And it says, are you one of these speakers? Are you the judge? Or are you an observer? Because Yachtly does allow observers. If a student has been eliminated and it's now finals and they're still logged into Yachtly, they can join rooms as an observer and watch the round. So now we'll go ahead and click that I'm Kara, select this. I'm now in the room. And if I want to, I can take the floor, in which case my video will appear right in the middle and I'll be able to perform. If this were a debate round, Yachtly actually structures the debate so that the affirmative speakers are on the left side of the screen, the negative speakers are on the right side of the screen, and the judges are at the bottom of the screen as if they were in a real room. So they really have tried to create like a fake physical space, an imitation of a physical space in a virtual space. Yachtly, much like NSDA Campus, is not free. So Yachtly has a cost to it also. I would encourage you to check the Yachtly website to see the details for that. What I was told or read some weeks ago was that it came out to about $2 per person per day. That's not per entry, that's per person. But they also sell bulk credits. So basically, if you're a tournament manager and you're using Yachtly, you need to tell it about how many participants you want to allow in the tournament. And that's going to cost you X credits. And then the credits are purchased by you in bulk. So if you buy tons of credits all at the same time, you save money per credit. I know it's like a virtual economy, but I definitely encourage you to check that out and see how that works, because I don't have all those conversions directly in my head. But I like the Yachtly idea. I like the platform in terms of the video quality. I like that there is a virtual space that everyone can congregate in. And I like the simplicity of just clicking on a room and going into it, much like you would enter a room in a building. So just keep in mind that this is a separate website with a separate login, whereas when I showed you the demonstration of NSDA Campus and 8x8, that was in the actual Speechwire platform itself. So just a different way of presenting that information. So now I'm going to go ahead and move on and talk about some other synchronous platforms that do work with Speechwire. So let's bring this up here. If you were on the session in the summer, I talked about running a tournament with Zoom. I'm going to not talk as much about running a tournament with Zoom. I already talked about Yachtly. Immediately, just because I don't have a Zoom call to demonstrate right now. So some of the tricks that I did in the Zoom call wouldn't be possible to demonstrate. So I'm going to try to talk about it conceptually. I will say this also, in the next week, I'm going to be creating some videos, which are how-to videos, which are going to be very similar to what I just did for the platforms that I just demonstrated. But there will be a Zoom one, and I will go into all of the steps of running a Zoom tournament on Speechwire. Basically, Speechwire now has the capability, if you're using Zoom, to go ahead and put in Zoom URLs for your rooms. So if I go into my Zoom tournament, and this is what the manager does to get ready. What you should think of if you're going to run your tournament in Zoom is think of your tournament as having wings of a building. And I'm assuming that people are using Zoom Pro accounts to run this tournament. Zoom Pro accounts can have up to 100 people on a call. If your school has accounts that can have more than that, then that's great. Then some of this will have more capacity for you in each of these wings of your building. But think of a Zoom call as a wing of a building. And each of those wings might have classrooms in it. Those would be breakout rooms in the Zoom call. So you can accommodate 100 people in one of these calls, but you might have 300 entries in your tournament along with 60 judges. So that's 360 total people. You might need 4 Zoom calls in order to accommodate those people. Then you might need another call for extemp prep. You might need another call for a judge standby room / tech support area. You know, these are all things that you might need more calls for. I say this to say that you might want to consider having a tab staff that is responsible for running these calls. So ask people who you would normally have in your tab room typing in ballots, but now there's no ballots to type in anymore. Ask them if they'd be willing to host a Zoom call. And if so, then they'll schedule the Zoom call in their Zoom account in which they have activated breakout rooms. I wish that Zoom just did that by default, but heretofore they have not. But once they've scheduled that meeting, which is going to go from like 8 a.m. until 4 p.m., the day of your tournament, ask them to email you the invite link for that meeting. And then you can go in as the manager to your rooms page, to this Zoom meeting URLs area, paste in the URL of the Zoom call, and put in a description of it, like the 400s, for instance. So right now I've got 3 Zoom calls in this meeting, and I've put in some rooms also, just like it was a physical tournament. Just really think of this as if it's a physical tournament with rooms and wings of a building. So I've put in the 100s through 104. I've put in the 200s through 205. I've put in the 300s. And once I've done that and put in the calls, then I just tell Speechwire which of my rooms are in each of the wings. So the 100 rooms are in the prelims 1 wing, the 200s are in the prelims 2 wing, and the 300s are in the prelims 3 wing. So now I've done all this work planning things out like this. And the reason that I've done this is that now if I go to the rooms manager and I assign rooms to events, it's going to be just like a regular tournament where I'm assigning rooms to my events just like I usually would. And then when I go out and go posting center, release, post, and blast rounds after scheduling them, like I have with DI here, what ends up happening is if I'm a judge and I go into my judge account and log out, log into my judge account. So if I'm a judge and I see my Zoom room here, my Zoom ballot, there's still a live video round link. And if I click it, it's going to take me into the specific Zoom call that that breakout room is happening in. Okay, so that's the benefit of doing all this. You could simply have 5 Zoom calls, email them out to all your students and judges and say, you figure it out, you cross-reference the schematic against your Zoom calls and figure out which one you're supposed to be in. But I think it's much quicker to get them into the correct Zoom call if it's embedded in their eBallot in this way. Because Speechwire knows that room 101, which appears right on my ballot, is in this Zoom call that you enter by clicking live video round. The same thing applies to students. So if I go here and I say Zoom tournament and I click on the link for the section, I am now in that call that my section takes place in. So again, it has directed me directly to the correct Zoom call. You might be thinking, couldn't you just put these links on the schematic? I could, but then anyone on the internet would be able to get into the Zoom call, and we don't want that. So again, this is why these accounts are important, because at some level, we're helping to authenticate who is supposed to be in these calls, and we're protecting you from having just random interlopers at some level getting into your calls. You can also see schematics in the student account. So even though they're not linked to the Zoom call, you can still see a schematic just like you would at a regular tournament if you looked on the wall. That's built right into this student account area. So I said I wouldn't spend too much time on Zoom, and now I've spent some time on Zoom. But I won't go into the gory details of administering the Zoom room. Suffice it to say that there is a strategy for the person who is running that Zoom call. And again, this is a member of your tab staff who you've brought in and asked to run that Zoom call. The strategy is that when the students and the judges get into the room, they should rename themselves with their room number in front of their name. And because the reason that you do that is that at the start of the day, the proctor has created those breakout rooms, right? So the manager says, you're running the 200 wing of my building, and it's rooms 201 through 214. So at the start of the day, they create the breakout rooms and they rename them 201 through 214. That process takes about 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes if you're not a super fast typist. So that's all you have to do to start the day. Then when round one's about to begin and these people are clicking the specific links in their Speechwire accounts in order to get into that Zoom call, they're all just coming in with their name as like Ben Stewart. Well, on their account, it told them what room they're going to be in. It says you're competing in room 101. So then they rename themselves when they get in the call 101 Ben Stewart. And what that does is it sorts them actually by name or by room number when you're assigning them to breakout rooms. So just take my word for it, because I can't show you, But when you're assigning people to a breakout room, you have your breakout rooms on the left side sorted 201, 202, 203, 204. And then all of the students and judges are also sorted by name. But in this case, their name starts with a number. So it goes 201s, 202s, 203s. And in that way, in 5 minutes before the round starts, you can go down that list and just say, okay, assign for 201. Bam, 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 bam. Assign for 202. And now the 202 people jump to the top because the 201 people are gone. Bam, 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 bam. You just go down that. You can assign probably 50, 60, 70 people in 5 minutes. It really does go that fast if they've renamed themselves appropriately. Then you open your breakout rooms, start the round, and then anyone who's late, anyone who's double entered, they might pop in a little bit later, but you can go ahead and just plug them specifically into that breakout room when they arrive. So I know that's like hard to visualize without me showing it, but that is the way that process goes. And again, I will go ahead and create a video to support that also. So I'm now presenting this one more time. I want to touch on some other platforms that can work with Speechwire. I went ahead and like violated what my plan was, and I just showed you Zoom and 8x8, so we can skip those. I will mention that Classrooms.Cloud, which you may remember from NSDA Nationals, if you took part in that, is an option for sure. They are a website that tries to provide a full-service video platform where essentially they're going to create all the Zoom calls for your tournament for you and have all those Zoom calls available for people to click on and enter once they've logged into your building on Classrooms.Cloud. So they take that Zoom setup portion out of your hands and they take care of it. That does come with a cost. They try to provide really high-level support and also provide really high-level service with regard to creating all that. It does cost $30 per competition room per day. So if you remember, NSDA Campus was $6 per competition room per day. This would be 5 times that. If you have a tournament that has 50 rooms, that cost would be 50 times 30, $1,500, I think. So, I mean, it ends up being a substantial expense. I think that for a lot of tournaments, that's going to be beyond their budget. I just sense in my discussions with people. But certainly if you can afford it and you want to use it, I think it can probably make things pretty easy from what I've seen. So it is something I wanted to mention. I've been in touch with the founder of Classrooms.Cloud. We've said that we'll try to integrate if it makes sense to do so. So far, not too many people have said they're going to use Classrooms.Cloud with Speechwire, so we'll see where that goes. I've also heard that they have a capacity because of the service that they provide. They only have so many tournaments they can serve in a season, and I think that they're near capacity or past capacity for the fall already. So I just want to put it on your map that it might be possible. Keep it in mind, but I'm not sure it'll be an option right now, so I didn't go too much into detail on it. You can use Google Meet to run a tournament, but in my experience, it takes additional overhead. The experience that I've seen is that basically the manager has to create meetings or create calendar events for every section and then invite the correct people to the section. That is a lot of work. That is going to be impossible to do on the fly on a Saturday. I will say that I've heard that next month, I think, Google is adding breakout rooms as a feature to Google Meet. So at that point, it becomes very similar to Zoom, right? That Zoom approach that I just talked about. You just have a big Google Meet, and then you can send people to breakout rooms. But that's putting the cart a little ahead of the horse. I need to see how that works before I can talk about how it's going to work. So I would say Google Meet conceptually does work. I've seen it work. People have done tournaments on Speechwire with Google Meet already. If you want to use Google Meet, I will want to hear your plan. I'll want to know what your plan is because I'm still learning more about Google Meet all the time. On this call, I've learned a substantial amount already. And so I'm always learning more about it. And if you have a plan for how you think Google Meet will work great for your tournament, especially if you're a G Suite school that already has substantial investment in Google's platform, then absolutely. I mean, I want to support you and I want to do whatever platform I can to make that tournament work. So talk to me about that if you want to do that. The same thing applies to Microsoft Teams. I have almost no familiarity with Microsoft Teams, but I know that there are schools that have tons of Microsoft Teams buy-in. And so I've heard some ideas already, which sound really interesting with regard to using Microsoft Teams with tournaments. One of the first districts I worked with to do Zoom has said, we actually mostly use Microsoft Teams, so we're going to try to figure out a way to move from Zoom tournaments to Microsoft Teams tournaments. If you're familiar with Microsoft Teams, I've heard that you can create channels in your Microsoft Teams instance, and then those channels can just have a link. So a channel could be like a competition room that just permanently exists and that you could just have in your tournament linked to your rooms in Speechwire. If that's like a foreign language to you, that's fine, because it is to me. If it's not a foreign language to you and what I said just makes all the sense in the world, I encourage you to email me afterward and we can talk about how that might work for your tournament. Because I want to learn that and I want to empower that, but we'll see. There's a website called hopin.to, which is like a conference website where basically you just essentially create meeting rooms and then people click on meeting rooms to go into them. So conceptually, you could create meeting room 101, 102, 103, 104, etc., as many rooms as you have in your tournament, and then just have them available, post your schematic, and people just enter the room that they're supposed to compete in, and they compete. It sounds pretty simple. I don't have much familiarity with it. I learned about it from Dino Pape, who used to work at NSDA, still works with them. He worked with the Great Communicator debates in the spring, and they ran on hopin.to. And it worked really well, according to Dino. It sounds like a really cool concept. I think the website's in beta still, the last that I saw. So I think you might have to reach out to them and see if you can use it. I also don't know what the pricing would be, but certainly I just wanted to mention it because it's something that people have said does work. And if it's something that you want to explore, again, I'm open to seeing if there are ways to make that work. So before I take questions, I've been talking for an hour. I'll only talk for about 5-10 more minutes, and then I'll take questions for at least 20 minutes. I do want to talk about a couple new features in Speechwire that were not here when I presented in the summer. The first one is live extemp and impromptu draw. So Speechwire now offers integrated live extemp and impromptu draw for online tournaments. I still encourage you to have like a Zoom call that specifically is for extemp draw, that you tell everyone this is the extemp draw Zoom call, and I'll look at embedding that into Speechwire so that students can very quickly get into that extemp draw Zoom call. But the reason for that is I want the proctor to say, to know who's here, to know who's ready to draw, just like you would in a normal extemp draw room. But what this allows is it allows some really neat things that you can do. Good, I'm still sharing. Okay. As the manager to get this stuff going. So I'm going to log into the tournament where I've been doing this. Cool. I'm logged in as the manager, normal tournament. And I'm going to show you what this draw system looks like. Because I think, as I was thinking about it, it seemed like adding a draw system was one of the best extra things that I could do to try and help facilitate live tournaments that wasn't really being done anywhere else that I could see. I think Classrooms.Cloud may do it. I think Yachtly is building one of these, but I can offer this to you right now, and it'll work with any platform that you choose because it just runs through the Speechwire student accounts. So if I go to Scheduling Manager and I scroll down and I click Manage Live Online Draw/Prep, which I may move, but this is where I have it right now. It says, okay, which of your events are you having a draw in? What type of draw are you having? Okay, so I said extemp is an extemp draw, impromptu is an impromptu draw. And then it says manage topics/materials. So for extemp, I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and it asks me for questions for each round. So I just go ahead and put in all the questions that I want to use for that round. The way this is currently designed is that each section has a bag of questions, and then the students draw out of the bag for that section, pick one of the questions, and put the other two back. I am open to other ways of structuring draw. For instance, in Illinois, for the state series, they do every student gets the same 3 questions. So everybody gets the same 3, and you just pick one. In reality, in physical world, that's a ton of envelopes. In this case, it's no envelopes. So it would certainly be possible to do that. But in this case, what I'm doing is just a bag of 12 questions, in this case for round 1. So let's say now that I'm going to go ahead and start the round and manage the draw for this round. So if I go back here and I say run live online draw / prep, I'm going to select extemp round 1, and that's going to bring up my schematic. Let's go ahead and just pretend that none of this has happened yet. Okay, we're going to close all this stuff. Cool. So actually, no, let's do round 2. Let's do round 2. Oh, there's no schematic. Let's just start from the beginning of round 2. So I'm sorry about this. I didn't see this coming. I forgot to actually reset this. Okay, we'll just pretend that I reset it. Sorry about that, everybody. And I'll show you what it looks like on the student side. So let's say that I have opened up draw for this student. So I go to scheduling manager, I go to run online prep, extemp, round 1, and I've opened Eli Hardwig's draw. So I click open draw. That is now open for that student. Now I go here, I go into my tournament, and I say draw. Click here to enter draw. So once I'm in there, you'll see that I've already drawn for these rounds. But if I hadn't, in extemp draw, it would say click here to draw now. And then once I did that, it would show me 3 questions, and I'd be able to click on the one that I want. So I went ahead and I clicked on, does globalism hurt America's national interest? So at that point now, it knows when I drew, it knows the question that I drew, and on the side of the person running prep, it would then say topic selected, and it says when they drew. So you know when each student in each section actually drew their question, so you have some concept as to when to call the next students to go ahead and start their draws. So again, when you click open draw, it immediately gives that student the opportunity to draw their question in their student account. So that is the way that we can keep all the draw going through Speechwire if we want to. Let's see here. I think I might be able to demonstrate that if I just trick it. Let me try tricking it. We'll see. Let's add Eli to section C, and we'll have Eli draw in section C. This may or may not work. I may have just broken the thing. It's very new, but we'll certainly try. So if we do this again, and I go into draw, I need to actually release it. So if I go to scheduling manager and I go to run online draw and do extemp round 1, we'll go ahead and open. Nope, it knows. It knows. Okay. All right, it's too smart for me. I can't do that. It knows that Eli drew already, so he's still got his question. At any rate, what I would say is just it does streamline that extemp draw interface. It brings it through Speechwire, so basically the person who's running draw can simply open the draw for anyone who they've called to draw. So here I've called Dan, Abby, and Fred. And then Dan, Abby, and Fred, right in their Speechwire account, will be able to click the question that they want to draw, and then that will be communicated also to the judge. So on the judge's EBallot, they'll be able to see which question that student drew so that they can reference that also. For Impromptu, it's very similar. It's just that instead of having an extemp prep room, you have it right on the judge's ballot. So the judge is the one who actually opens draw for the student, and then the student immediately sees the topics that they have to choose from, and they can pick the one that they want to speak on. And then the judge can see their selection on their Impromptu ballot. So that is the prep system. I think it's really neat. I think it's going to make a difference. I'm excited about it. I certainly encourage you to consider using it if you're going to run extemp at your tournament, because again, you've already got all these people in these accounts, right? You've already got them in a Speechwire account to compete. You might as well put the draw in the Speechwire account as well. And I'll create a video for that actually like works. Sorry, that was the one thing I forgot to reset for this presentation. And the last thing I want to present before I stop is the delivery of the electronic ballots to the students. So again, this was not something that I could demonstrate in the summer, because in the summer, this did not exist yet. And I'm pretty sure that this will actually work the way that I wanted to, as opposed to not the way that I wanted to, but we'll see. So as usual, at the end of a tournament, for an electronic tournament, you can go to the homepage, click Posting Center, and you can go ahead and click the link to post e-ballots to coach accounts. But now, when you release the e-ballots to the coach accounts, they also go into the students' accounts. So that's a new thing. I want to mention real quick that if coaches want to, they do have the option to opt to review the e-ballots before the students get them. So if I log in as a coach and I go to my access my team's eBallots link, this used to just have this part here. And it still does work, where if a manager releases the eBallots to the coaches, they can see the PDF version of all of their students' eBallots by clicking these links. So for instance, if I want to see these speech eBallots, I just click this and open my PDF, and here we go. Only one for this tournament, but in this case, Eli got this ballot that says, test, you did good, Eli. Okay, not a great ballot, but still, you've got your comments here from that judge. Let's say that I really don't want Eli to get this ballot. If there was something offensive in it, I hope not, but if there was, I could actually block it as a coach. So if I return to my eBallots list and I say block specific eBallots from your students, I can now block individual students' eBallots for this tournament. Here are all the eBallots that were available. They're all in my PDF. In this case, these ballots just weren't completed. And then I can block them. So like, for instance, if I wanted to block that DI ballot from Eli, I just click block, and now Eli will not receive that in his account. I'm going to unblock it just so I can show you what it looks like. But still, you can block them that way if you want to. Additionally, if you want to, you can choose to review all of the eBallots before releasing any of them to your team. So the two options are release eBallots to students immediately when the manager releases them, or don't release eBallots until I release them for the tournament. So I click on that, and then at that point, I can choose which tournaments I want to release, or I can unrelease them here if I want to. So in this case, I have reviewed the test tournament 8x8 eBallots, and I've released them to my students. And what that looks like on the student side, if I log into a student account here, I say view your electronic ballots, and then I pick which tournament I want to view, so it knows which tournaments my team attended. And then it says, okay, here were your entries at that tournament, and I'm going to look at that DI ballot. So here we go. This is my ballot. I got 3 with 98 points. I went 8 minutes, and it says test, you did good, Eli. Okay, great. And then that also works for debate. So if I bring up a debate ballot, here we go. Round 1, section C. The winner was me and my partner Earl, and we got they were doing points by team, so it only shows up for one student, but we got 27.5 points, and then the other team got 23 points. There are comments for each side, and then here's your RFD there at the bottom. So all of those eBallots can now be released directly to students at the end of a tournament, and you as the coach, if you want to, have the option to review those eBallots before they go to the students to make sure there's not feedback going to those students that you don't want going to the students. So that's it. I went 1 extra minute beyond what I said I was going to before I took some questions here. But I do want to just point out a couple things at the end. I really think it's going to be important as we move into this world. First off, to cure COVID would be great because I would prefer not to be doing any of this. But if we can't have that outcome, then I think we need to really try to help each other out, share experience that we have as we work on these electronic tournaments. Find tab staff that maybe has a little experience. Obviously, right at the start of the year, that might not be possible. In that case, you may rely on me a little bit to answer questions, to get things ready. But certainly, as you have people in your community who gain experience doing this, bring them into your tournament, quote-unquote, tab room. Certainly, I don't think we need as many people in tab as we have sometimes had in the past. Might free up some more people to judge a few rounds here and there. Because honestly, for some of these approaches, one person could probably run the tournament, but that doesn't mean necessarily that you should just have one person running the tournament. It might help to have, for instance, a tab room Zoom call that you send out the link to all the people who are attending. And if they have a problem, they can come into that tab room Zoom call and they can get advice. You might have one person scheduling debate, one person scheduling speech, one person answering questions, one person managing judges. There are a few different ways to do that. So certainly bring people in. It's a learning process. Certainly it's going to be a little bit weird at the start. I hope that in the process of this call, I've been able to communicate some of the ways that you can choose to run a tournament. All of these ways I think will work. I think that they're all feasible. The tournament experience is very different in all of these different ways, particularly with asynchronous versus synchronous. With synchronous, you're trying to have that tournament experience on a Saturday where everyone's taking part, albeit from a screen, albeit from their house. With the asynchronous experience, students are still getting to perform, but there's not the togetherness feel of everybody doing the same thing at the same time. So it's different, but these are all ways to try to keep speech and debate going during this period. I know that as you host tournaments, you're always trying to aim for perfection. You're trying to aim for a perfect experience for all your attendees. I encourage you to still try for perfection. I'm still trying for that. But I think that in the meantime, we do have something of a choice between nothing and something. And I encourage you to try for something. I encourage you to see if we can present something to the students in terms of speech and debate activity rather than nothing, which otherwise, given regulations and rules in various communities, might be what we get stuck with. So that's all I've got. I'm going to go ahead and bring this back over here and open up the chat. And at this point, anyone can interrupt me also. But I'm going to go ahead and just try to scroll through the chat here. I'll stop presenting, and I'm going to answer some questions here. So let's see here. Michael says, do the ballots display judge names, or is that a setting we can toggle on or off? I'm talking about the ballots that are released to the students. Yes, the ballots do show the judge's name on the ballot that is given to the student. Presumably, that could possibly be turned off. I would still want that to at least be on the one that goes to the coach, because I want the coach to know who's giving that feedback. But I'll keep an open mind on that possible idea there. Do they have to use a school email? No, they do not. So students can give you, as the coach, whatever email address they prefer to use. Again, I prefer for that to go to the coach. So the coach is the one releasing that information to me about that student. I know that's like an extra step, and it's one more thing that coaches have to do, but it could be a school email or a personal email, whatever the student prefers to use. And that's also where they'll receive the blasts that they get too during the tournament. So when they receive notifications that they have around, it's going to go to that email address. I talked about a hybrid tournament. But I didn't actually show you the hybrid tournament. I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. It's very quick. So let me do that. Go into Speechwire. I just want to show you what it's like to configure a hybrid tournament from the coach's perspective. Let me see. I have changed the layout here. Okay, good. I just want to make sure you could still see it. Okay, so let's say I want to turn this tournament that's happening on 8x8 into a hybrid tournament. If I go to Control Panel and I go to e-balloting and video settings, here it says, what platform will you run your tournament on? And I'm going to say hybrid. So then I say update settings. And now a new button has appeared that says configure hybrid platforms. If I click on that, I can now tell it, and I've clearly put something in here already. I can tell it what platform I'm going to use for every one of my events. So let's say that I want to run Congress on NSDA campus, all the debate on NSDA campus, and I want to run Extemp on NSDA campus. But then I want to run everything else asynchronous. I could do that, and I hit save, and now it's done. So now when Speechwire sends out the links to the video rounds, the debate, Extemp, and Congress rounds will be on NSDA campus, but all of the speech events will run asynchronous. So you could also differentiate this by round if you wanted to. You could run some of your speech finals synchronous too if you wanted to on NSDA campus. Up to you, certainly something that you can configure. Stop presenting there and bring the chat back up. All righty, let's see here. Where was I? Okay, here we go. Does the ranking automatically calculate the points? The judges would need to put in both the rank and the points when they are judging around. Is that your question, Brent? I want to make sure that I've got it. I think we've got you muted.
Yeah, it was, but so the judges will have to know that a 1 is worth 8 points, a 2 is worth this, and because usually the tab room did that, didn't it?
Oh, do you mean for sweepstakes? No, Speechwire will calculate the sweepstakes. Absolutely.
That's the question. I should have said sweepstakes.
Yep.
Thank you for clarification.
Sorry about that. Yep, absolutely. You betcha. And that can still be customized per tournament. So I will certainly still work with managers to figure out how you want to configure your sweepstakes points. Absolutely. I answered that question. At tournaments using e-ballots, we've had the problem of never finding out the ranks from judges who only ranked but didn't comment. That is a good point. I did not think about that. I believe that has been addressed, but let me note that just to make sure. And what a shame that those judges are not putting in any comments. Come on. But let's see here, rank, but no comments. I'll make sure that I take a look at that. Assuming we can pause the campus video. So with regard to the asynchronous tournaments, you can certainly pause asynchronous video if you need to in order to leave the room or what have you. For campus, it's literally like an ongoing room that you are in the classroom for. So there is no way to pause it. You could ask a student to just stop, but I mean, I wouldn't do that because that will, just like a real round, that's going to be bad. So you can pause asynchronous, but synchronous is just like a live tournament in person. There's no pausing it. Dave asks, if I was giving 3 days for judges to complete judging recorded rounds, will Speechwire allow that? Does that incur greater cost? It does not. So for pre-recorded asynchronous, there's no cost at all for that type of video. So if you want to do an asynchronous tournament, you could have it last 2 weeks if you wanted to, and it would cost you no more to use Speechwire with that asynchronous approach. It's the synchronous approaches where you start to incur a cost because those are happening on some video platform that someone is having to pay for. Let's see. In synchronous rounds like debate, should judges keep their own time at home on their phones or be encouraged to use NSTA Campus Timer or both? Good question. I've run one test meet on NSDA campus, and the platform performed very well, which I was happy about. It was done in New Jersey. They had a bunch of students and a bunch of judges do an actual tournament to test it out. The timer, I got mixed feedback on the NSDA campus timer. Some people couldn't figure out how it worked. Other people couldn't figure out why it was designed the way it was. So until people get used to the NSDA campus timer, I would definitely recommend that they still have their phone or still have some kind of a stopwatch or even like a timer in another tab if they have 2 monitors or something that they're comfortable with. And then certainly experiment with the NSDA campus timer. And if you think that it works well, go ahead and use it. But certainly a phone is very easy to use also. Let's see. We're a Google school and all non-school domains are blocked from school email addresses. I'll have to work to whitelist. Yeah, that's a good point. Or have them use personal. Yeah, so I know that was a little bit more of a discussion topic. Definitely use whatever email address will be able to receive blasts from Speechwire. So if students can't receive email reliably from anyone but their school through their school account, they might have to use a personal one. So in that case, you might have to collect those.
Hey, Ben.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Jason.
Hey,
what's up?
That's okay. So I was just wondering then, is the speechwire.com the only domain that I would need to whitelist for blasts from Speechwire, or are there others?
Thank you for asking that. I appreciate that. You should whitelist speechwire.com and speechwiremail.com. I will... If you email me, I will send you a dispositive list. Admittedly, it will be long, unfortunately, although I am working on shrinking it. But the ones to start with would be speechwire.com and speechwiremail.com. That's all one word. And then there's like speechwire1.com, speechwire2.com. And the way that I have done load balancing in the past, there's a chance that there might be some email coming from some other domains. I'm trying to get away from that, but you can email me if you want the full dispositive list. Absolutely. Okay. Looks like these were all answered, I think. Okay. Dave, do you want to ask any question that remains from this conversation that you had?
No, you answered the first time. I think that people thought I was talking about rooms.
Okay, gotcha. Well, if you have anything remaining, let me know. Let's see here. Yes. So Ronnie's question, if the 100s are all in the one Zoom call, is it the job of the tab staff person to put them in the proper breakout room? Yes. Yes, that is correct. I worry that students will just go ahead.
So the other kind of follow-up I had to that, because you did answer that shortly after I think I asked it.
Okay.
So, but the follow-up, I guess, would be when students come in, like the waiting rooms, I'm assuming will be, we can enable those to where that way they're not because Zoom makes some kind of noise, right in the middle of whoever entering the room. So I'm assuming we could put them in the waiting room until the speaker's done and then put them into.
There are no waiting rooms for breakout rooms. However, I don't know that the breakout rooms have any sort of an alert when people enter the breakout room. I haven't experienced that, so hopefully there isn't. I definitely understand with regard to the alert that you get when someone enters the overall Zoom call. The fortunate thing is that the overall Zoom call isn't where the performance is happening. So if there's an alert in there, I don't think it'll interrupt the performance. One thing to keep in mind, though, unfortunately, you're totally right about it would be awesome if Zoom had a waiting room feature that like someone in a breakout room could administer, but everyone in the breakout room is viewed as just person in breakout room. And when they enter the breakout room, there could be a performance going on. So, a lot of this stuff comes down to, I think that norms are going to start to develop where people kind of know, like, okay, I'm being sent to my breakout room. I probably shouldn't have the TV on, or I probably shouldn't be making a lot of noise, or I should probably mute my microphone. Hopefully that happens, but, we'll see. And cute baby, by the way. Any other questions here that I can answer? I think a lot of these things here got answered. One thing about Google is I think that I can only see 9 of you, and you are 9 great people who I enjoy seeing, but I can't see everybody else. So if someone has a question, I will encourage you to just start talking with your microphone unmuted.
Okay, Ben, it's
Deb,
Deborah.
go ahead.
I have, so my understanding is that I can use different platforms. Like I could use Zoom for my discussion, and I can use Campus for my like Impromptu and Extemp. And yes, can I do that? Okay, yes. And I'd have my Interps film. The other question was broadcasting.
Okay.
Can we do the same thing for broadcasting that we do for Extemp and Impromptu and have a radio broadcasting prepare room?
I think so. So for Illinois, I'm certainly designing a radio speaking prep, but they do radio differently. So they do a newscast every round. So every round you prep a newscast. So for them, I'm going to just be delivering basically links to packets. So essentially, when it's your time to prep, you're going to get a link to a packet. Now, obviously, that's not very secure because then they could send it to all their teammates. But we do our best. Right, if people are going to cheat in that way, I'm afraid they might just be able to cheat in that way. Now, with broadcasting, can you tell me kind of, forgive me, I just don't have as much familiarity. You have a different prompt for each round, right?
Yeah, for middle school, it's really simple in the sense that they get a 1 minute, they have to prepare a 1 minute commercial for 30 minutes. So I'm thinking I could do a Zoom room and just have them all see the copy and have them write their commercial, right?
Sure.
And then the second round, they're going to have to read an editorial.
Okay. So it sounds kind of like it might be useful for me to have the link set up, just like I'm doing for Illinois, where you'd be able to put in a link for the round that would get released to the students who are going to prep. And then they'd be able to see it once you release it to them. And it could be a link to an editorial. It could be a link to the copy for the commercial.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be good.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad to hear that my solution I will be working on already may work for you. That's great.
Good.
Yep.
Well, right. While we're on the middle school, could I just piggyback on that?
Sure.
I have this in the chat, but so for Extemp prep, we actually give the middle schoolers some articles to go along with the question that they select. So like high school, Well, they draw 3 questions and then they put 2 back and they get articles to go with the one. So I'm assuming you can do that, but it's more just to make sure you understand what I'm asking.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we have to link the article somehow to the question.
Okay.
But we don't want them to get the articles for all the questions that they draw, only the 1 out of the 3 that they select.
Okay. There should be some way to do that. Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Candy.
Ben, middle school in Indiana, as we have talked about before, has a few different rules, and I will send you Extemp and Broadcast and Impromptu, because those are different than Indiana high school rules. And then perhaps you and I can just do it through email in terms of what would be most helpful, since these events are, we have to tweak them for the middle school.
Would this be with regard to like the language on the ballots?
No, so much as the actual rules for the event. Like our Extemp only draws once for the 3 rounds, and it would have it linked to that article that the student can use
Right.
as support for the question.
Okay.
Like our discussion, and I think Deborah said it well, middle school discussion is not Socratic. It is topic-based, and it varies a bit from how we run discussion in the high school level. And then our broadcast, you know, each round is different, but it's much simpler. And there are prep times, much longer prep times, for example, to write their commercial.
Okay.
They don't write their commercial ahead like the high school kids do.
Okay.
And it would actually, though, in response to your other question, Ben, be helpful to have that option to put the rules for the event on the ballot.
Yeah.
Because right now we can only put the high school rules on our ballots, and that's very confusing because they are different in significant ways.
Okay, so let me respond to all of this. So much of what's been addressed will already be in the system. So if the prep time is different, that's just something that the prep person handles. If the number of topics is different, or if there's only one draw, you can just have one draw. So that you just won't do the round 2 and round 3 draws. And they'll just continue using the same topic. And then with regard to the rules on the ballots, certainly once we get back to in-person, I would be happy to work with the middle school community to get your correct rules on those ballots. I think that's a great idea. With regard to the electronic ballots, I am not going to be redesigning the electronic ballots to have the rules on them. So in fact, right now, the high school ones also don't have the rules on them. However, I am absolutely open to allowing for a PDF version of a blank ballot that a judge could open up and refer to during the round. And I would be happy to work with both the high school and the middle school community to make sure that the correct PDF is showing up for the correct event on each of those e-ballots. But it will be beyond my ability, just due to the sheer number of things that I have to support, to redesign every HTML version of the e-ballot to match everything. PDF links, though, extremely within my ability, and something that I have already done in other communities, and I would be very happy to do also in your community. And then let me also just say, Jeannie, in response to your offer to work with me via email to make sure that any other rules questions are worked out, I would be very happy to do that. So please do go ahead and email me that information. I think, fortunately, a number of the things I will just be able to say, here's how that'll work within the context of what I've already created. But there will also certainly be other things that I think that I need to adapt to. And I think that email would be a great place to do that. So I appreciate your time in helping me to understand those things. Thank you so much.
Hey, Ben, could I ask a question about the path that the money will travel on? Because we don't normally charge entry fees in Indiana historically, but I do think I'll be charging a small fee per entry to help offset the cost of the software. So I'm curious what direction money flows and when. So if people get an invoice generated by Speechwire, does that mean they're just going to like mail me checks and then I need to turn around and then you're going to invoice me and I need to deposit those checks at the school? and then turn around and pay that back to you? Or is it possible for their money that they're paying for their entry fees to go directly to Speechwire instead of needing to pass through my hands first?
Their money would not go directly to me.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm sorry about that. With that arrangement, certainly that you've proposed, it would make a lot of sense if it did. But where I've been working with already, a lot of times they bundle a whole bunch of stuff, including at some level fundraising, into their entry fees. And so those entry fees have to go to them first. And that's just the way I've structured the process. So I'm gonna have to stick with that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Quick question regarding NSDA points.
Sure.
And Ben, you were so patient with our districts in Indiana last spring and getting us linked. And
No, you were patient with me.
That too. Thank you very much. It's good that we're all responsible. However, there is also a link that tournament hosts have to, or a button that if they don't throw those to the NSDA, then on your NSDA account, those of you who give points to your students and belong to NSDA, you cannot capture them and they will not automatically be sent, because if we're all, unless it's at the end of the PDA and I can sit there and enter points on Sunday like we used to do. There were a couple tournaments last year I had to keep asking people to release the electronic count to NSDA. So then under automatically capturing points, it could work.
Not exactly. I think probably the causality was a little bit different on that, but I can see how it would look like that. There's nothing for managers to do at all. Managers do not have any part in this process. What is absolutely crucial is that coaches link their students to their NSDA accounts prior to the tournament. It is super crucial, because otherwise, Jeannie, what you're saying there will happen, which is that about 2-3 days after the tournament, typically, although I wouldn't count on having that much time, the auto post happens. So at that point, any students who are linked to NSDA records will have their points automatically reported to the NSDA. Once that happens, it cannot be done again. It is impossible. The NSDA does not permit for a tournament to be reposted. So if a student is not linked prior to that auto posting happening, their points will not be auto posted. And at that point, like Jeannie says, they will have to be manually typed in some way or another. Yeah, which is a pain. So fortunately, linking the students is a one-time thing where you can go into your account as a coach and click on the NSDA icon that says link NSDA account. And then you just go ahead and link those students to their NSDA records. You basically will log into your NSDA account in your Speechwire account, and then you'll be able to link up those rosters. And like Jeannie says, it is crucial that you do this, because otherwise it's going to be a whole bunch of work later on. But fortunately for the manager, there is nothing that they have to do. It's all on the coach's side.
Thanks, Ben, for clearing that up, because
Are we talking about linking, meaning that's when we give them their email?
No. So it's basically, consider it this way. And I know this is confusing because there's like so many different accounts flying around. Each student can have an email address in their Speechwire account that allows them to log in and compete at a virtual tournament. But this is basically, consider this as taking their Speechwire record and linking it to their NSDA merit ID. So that NSDA knows who they are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And they don't have to have an NSDA account to take part in an NSDA campus tournament. I should say that too. NSDA campus will let any student, whether or not your school is a member of the NSDA, compete in an NSDA campus tournament. It's just that then those campus rooms have to be paid for by someone. That's all.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. I've overshot my time a bit.
Link.
Yes, please link all of your students. Please email me, everyone, if you have any questions. Dave, you asked about who's responsible for getting the high school PDFs to me. Certainly, I have the ability to create some blank PDFs just from my own system, but if you want to send me some, if somebody on the board wants to send me some, I would love to use those.
And that really wasn't for you. I put
Okay.
IHSFA. We want to know who's responsible to get with you, so that gets done. So it's just a reminder for us.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I look forward to getting with that person. So that'll be good. We'll get that knocked out. Anything else I can address here at the end? You all are very kind in the chat. I want to thank you preemptively for being patient about this process, because it's going to be a learning process for everybody, and I know that. So I'll try to help as much as I can.
Then are you going to be publishing some tutorials or something that we could share out to people on setting this up? Or even better, like when I'm trying to set this up, would you be available to peek over my virtual shoulder at some point? Because I've sat through this presentation twice and learned a lot both times, but I'm confident I'm going to forget key things when I go to do this in a couple of weeks.
Sure. So what I plan to do, first off, certainly the nice thing is that the tournament setup process is very similar to what it has been in the past. For most of these platforms, there's not too much extra that has to be done. However, at the end of your setup process, or during the setup process, if you want to email me any questions, or if you just want me to look it over, I would be happy to do that. Absolutely. That's totally fine. The other thing that I would say is that I do intend, time permitting, in the next week or two, to create video tutorials on a number of topics that will then be available on the public site or in the manager's site in places where they are useful, or possibly on the help page, where then you'll be able to review specific topics. So it's not just like a recording of a 90-minute session or a recording of a 60-minute session, where it's actually, here is running a tournament on campus. Here is running a tournament with Yachtly. Here is running a tournament with Zoom, and then maybe one for e-ballots. Here is how to judge with an e-ballot. Here is how to go into your student account and get into your round. So those are all things that I want to create. I'll probably create about 10 to 15 of those and then make those available. If possible, I'm also going to try to have a brief PDF that accompanies them, so there are some written instructions on those topics as well. Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time, everybody. I'm grateful. I know there's just an unending amount of stuff to confront nowadays. So thank you for sticking with me and staying with me in terms of working through all this. And JD, thanks for telling me about TileView also. I did see that, and this is awesome. So I am now a Google Meet Pro, and I thank you all for that too. It's a cool system. So thanks so much. Thanks for all the work that you've done this summer. Thanks for all the work you're doing this season and now and today and this weekend. And thank you to IHSFA for having me as part of this and for setting up this session. I'm really grateful for that too. So I see some of all of y'all and IHSFA board members on the call too still, and I'm grateful for all that you do and for making me part of this. Thank you.